Every auto pay that kept my brother's household running came out of one account, mine. They spent years deciding I was the family failure and never once noticed the failure was covering their mortgage. I'm Cody. My brother Steven is 6 years older, married to Regina, 3 kids. The family script on me was set before I was 30, and nobody ever updated it. Cody never settled down, no wife, no kids. So what does he even do with himself? My mother, Rita, said it like a weather report. Steven said it like he was reading test results. And for years I ate it because fighting about it every holiday cost more than just letting it slide. What none of them clocked is that no wife and no kids also meant no mortgage, split 3 ways, no daycare, no travel team fees, no second car payment. It meant that when Steven's hours got cut a few years back and he pulled me aside in our parents' garage, embarrassed, not making eye contact, I said yes. Then I kept saying yes. The yes turned into a system I ran without anyone thanking me for it. I covered the gap on their mortgage the year it nearly went under. I put Steven and Regina's phones on my plan, then added the kids as they got old enough. When their water heater died, I paid for the unit and the install because Steven was between things. Regina's car is financed in my name because her credit couldn't carry it. None of this was a loan with a handshake and a repayment date. It was just me, quietly, every month, keeping a household afloat that spent its free time explaining to relatives what a shame it was that I hadn't made anything of my life. I told myself it was fine. That's the part I keep chewing on. I told myself family is family, that Steven was proud and I didn't want to rub his face in it, that the kids didn't ask to be born into a tight spot. So I made it invisible on purpose. I never mentioned a dollar of it at dinners. And because I hid it well, they got to believe the money came from Steven being a good provider, and they got to keep me at the kids' table of adult respect. Here's the thing I want to be honest about because I've had time to think. I built my own trap. Every year I stayed quiet, the story hardened. By the time this Christmas came around, everyone in that house genuinely believed I was the one who owed them something. Presents, gratitude even. Like they were doing me a kindness letting the sad single uncle sit at their table. Christmas was at Steven and Regina's. Nice place. The place I helped keep. Rita was there, my Aunt Catherine, Steven's father-in-law Antonio, a couple of the kids' friends floating in and out. I brought good wine and a stack of gifts I'd actually put thought into because I always do. Because being the uncle without kids of my own means I go overboard on theirs and I like it. That's not a complaint. It started at dinner, the way it always does with Rita. She got going about her friend's son who just had his second baby, and then she pivoted to me the way she always pivots to me. This little sigh, saying she just wished I'd figure my life out before she's too old to enjoy grandkids from both sons. I did what I always do. I smiled. Said something about being married to my work. Reached for the potatoes. But Regina picked it up, and Regina had wine in her, and Regina went somewhere Rita usually doesn't. She said, kind of laughing so it wouldn't count as an insult, that honestly she worried about me, because a man my age with no wife, no kids, nothing he's building, what's it all even for? And Steven, my brother, my actual brother, leaned back and said the line, no wife, no kids, no life, like a punchline he'd been saving. And Antonio chuckled and said something about how at least I'd die with money since I've got nobody to spend it on. And Catherine did this soft laugh into her glass. And my mother nodded. That's the image I can't get rid of. Not the words, the nodding, the whole table doing this gentle collective agreement that yeah, that's Cody, that's about the size of him. A waste of space with a good credit score. And the wild part, the part that actually got me, is what Steven said next. Because he wasn't even being cruel on purpose. That's what made it worse. He started telling Antonio how well they were doing lately, how they'd finally gotten on top of things, how he'd been handling the house better, gesturing around at the kitchen I paid to put a water heater under. He was taking credit for my money to impress his wife's father, while sitting 3 feet from me, having just called my life empty. I didn't blow up. I want to be clear I didn't flip the table. I'm not built like that. And honestly, if I'd yelled, they'd have had a field day. There he goes. Cody's sensitive. Cody can't take a joke. So I did the thing that I think scared them more later, looking back. I got quiet. I finished my plate. I helped clear. I said the food was great. I hugged the kids, told them I loved them, meant it. And I drove home and sat in my car in my own driveway for a while doing math I already knew the answer to. Because here's what nobody at that table understood. I wasn't hurt like a sad man is hurt. I was done, which is different. Something had been holding a door shut for years. My own guilt, my own need to be the good guy who never says anything. And that door just swung open. I sat there and I thought, okay, no life, no use to anybody, just money nobody should have to think about. Fine, let's find out. I'm not going to pretend I made some cold master plan. It wasn't a scheme. It was more like permission. For 4 years, I'd been asking myself a quiet question every month when I moved that money. Am I a sucker for doing this? And I'd always answered no. It's family, it's love, it's fine. That night, they answered it for me, out loud, at the dinner table, to laughter. So the next morning I started, and I told myself the whole time this isn't revenge. This is just me stopping doing a thing nobody knew I was doing and nobody thanked me for. If it hurt them, that was the truth of the situation revealing itself, not me attacking anybody. First thing, I logged into the account everything ran through, and I turned off the recurring transfer that topped up their checking every month. Just the transfer. Didn't touch anything of theirs. It was never theirs. It was mine, landing in their account. Then I sat looking at the phone plan for a long time, because the phones felt personal, the kids didn't do anything, and I actually left the phones alone that first day. I want you to know that, because later people are going to call me heartless, and I keep coming back to the fact that I sat there protecting my nephew's phone line at 7 in the morning the day after they laughed at me. Then there's Regina's car. The car in my name. And I'll get into what I did and didn't do there in the update, because that's where this stopped being about a family being embarrassed and turned into Steven calling me 30 times in one afternoon. But I need to explain the timeline right or it won't make sense. What I'll say for now is I didn't tell anyone. That was the whole move, if there even was a move. For years, I'd made my help invisible, so I just let it stay invisible while I switched it off. I didn't send a text saying, "You hurt me, so I'm cutting you off," because that would have given them a villain to point at, and I wasn't going to hand them that. I just quietly stopped being the floor under their feet and let them notice on their own schedule when they hit the ground. They noticed fast. Faster than I expected, which told me something about how close to the edge that household actually was the whole time they were pitying me. 3 days. That's how long it took for the first autopay to bounce, and for the dominoes I'd been personally holding upright to start going over. 3 days after, no wife, no kids, no life, my phone lit up with my brother's name, then my mother's, then Regina's, then Steven's again, then a voicemail, then another, until the little badge on my phone said I had a full mailbox from the same 3 people who, 72 hours earlier, could not have told you a single thing I did that mattered. I haven't called any of them back yet. That's actually why I'm posting, because half of me knows exactly what I'm doing, and the other half grew up being told that family is family, and I'm the selfish one for making them feel this, and I genuinely can't tell anymore which half is right. I'll put the details of what those 3 days actually looked like on their end in the update, plus what was in the voicemails, because the voicemails are a whole thing, and Steven says something in the last one that changed how I see this entire situation and honestly how I see the last 4 years. For now, I'm just a guy who apparently has no life, sitting in a quiet apartment watching his phone fill up with people who suddenly remember his name. Update. Okay, a lot of you told me to listen to the voicemails before I did anything else, and I did. And I wish I hadn't done it all in one sitting because by the 4th one, I was pacing my kitchen at midnight talking out loud to nobody. So, the voicemails. The first 2 were Steven, and they were almost normal, which is what made them so funny in a grim way. First one, he's confused, telling me the mortgage payment got declined, must be a bank glitch on my end, can I check it? Thanks, bud. He didn't even know it was me. 4 years of my money landing in his account like rain, and he genuinely thought it came from the sky and the sky was malfunctioning. Second voicemail, an hour later, a little tighter, saying Regina's car payment also bounced and now something's clearly wrong with the account. Can I call him back? The account? Not my account. The account. Like it was a shared utility we both tapped into. That word did something to me. Third voicemail is Regina, and she's already past confused and into annoyed, saying they're getting late notices. This is really stressful with the kids. And could I please just fix whatever I broke? Could I fix whatever I broke? I helped that woman get a roof and a car, and she left me a voicemail implying I'd sabotaged something that belonged to her. Fourth one is Rita, my mother, and hers was different, quieter. And it's the one that kept me up. She didn't mention money at all. She just said, in this small voice, that Stephen called her very upset and she doesn't understand what's happening, but she knows I'd never do anything to hurt the family on purpose. And please call your brother back, honey. You know how he gets. You know how he gets. 4 days after she sat at that table and nodded along while they buried me, she was already back to managing my feelings, so I'd go rescue Stephen. I didn't call. I want to be honest, that part of not calling was cowardice and part of it was strategy, and I couldn't fully separate them, which is why I came here in the first place. But the not calling ended on its own, because on day 4 Stephen just showed up. He didn't call first. He drove over and leaned on my buzzer until I let him up. And I want to walk you through this whole conversation because a lot of you assumed I was avoiding them, and that's not what happened. We talked. We talked for almost 2 hours. This was not me hiding behind a blocked number. This was me and my brother in my living room going at it until we were both hoarse. He came in already talking before he even sat down, doing this nervous fast thing where he's half laughing, saying, okay, what's going on? What did you do? Because Regina thinks I did something to the accounts and I told her that's insane. My brother wouldn't do that, so just tell me what glitch we're dealing with so I can tell her. And I said, calm as I've ever been, there's no glitch. I turned it off. He didn't get it. He actually said, turned what off? And that's the moment I understood that Stephen had spent 4 years genuinely not knowing, or not letting himself know. And I had to sit my own brother down and itemize it. The mortgage top-up every month, the phones, the water heater, the car in my name. I watched it land on him in real time, this slow horror. And the first thing out of his mouth wasn't thank you, and it wasn't, I'm sorry, it was, you've been keeping track this whole time? Keeping track. Like the offense was that I remembered. That's when the first real fight started, because I said, no, Stephen, I wasn't keeping track, that's the whole point. I never once brought it up. You're the ones who brought up my empty little life over ham. And he goes, oh, so this is about Christmas, this is you being sensitive about a joke. And I lost it a little there, not yelling. But I stood up, because I was not going to be sitting down for this. I told him it's not a joke when the entire table nods. It's not a joke when you take credit for my water heater to impress Antonio. It's a verdict. You all held a little trial and found me guilty of having money and no one to leave it to, and I just stopped showing up to serve the sentence. He switched tactics then, and honestly watching my brother cycle through tactics was its own kind of heartbreak. He went to guilt. The kids. Cody. Think about the kids. This is going to hurt them. Are you really going to make innocent kids suffer because your feelings got hurt? And that one actually got me, because the kids are the one true thing in all this. And I told him the truth, that I left the phones on. 4 days in, I still hadn't touched my nephew's phone lines, because unlike the rest of them, I can tell the difference between the people who insulted me and the people who didn't. And you'd think that would land as, oh, my brother's not a monster, he protected my kids. Instead, Stephen latched onto it as proof I was being manipulative. See, you're picking and choosing, you're playing games, you're punishing me and Regina specifically. Like the fact that I aimed the consequences precisely at the adults who earned them made me the calculating one. Here's where it got into new territory, stuff I hadn't even thought about going in. Because Stephen, cornered, started defending the Christmas thing by explaining it, and the explanation was worse than the insult. He said Regina's been on him for years about me. That she thinks it's weird a grown man has no family of his own. That she doesn't fully trust me around the kids because of it. Not that I'd ever do anything, he rushed to say. Just that it's unnatural. A man with no wife who's that into his nephews. And he said it like he was defending me. Like, see, I always tell her you're harmless. Harmless. I've paid that woman's car note for 2 years, and behind my back I'm the uncle she watches around her own children because I never gave her a sister-in-law to gossip with. That was a brand new wound I did not walk into that room expecting, and it reframed every Christmas, every birthday, where I went overboard on the kids' gifts. They weren't seeing a generous uncle. Some of them were seeing something they had to keep an eye on. I asked him flat out. Is that what Mom thinks too? And he got cagey, which is an answer. He said Mom just wants grandkids and worries I'll end up alone. But the way he wouldn't look at me told me my mother and my sister-in-law have had conversations about me, about my life, about what's wrong with me, that I was never in the room for. That's the thing about being the family topic. Everyone's discussed you. You're the only one who wasn't invited. So now I'm not even fighting about money anymore. I'm standing in my living room, finding out my family has a whole private theory of me that I've been funding. Stephen, to his credit, or maybe just because he was drowning, finally did say something like an apology. But it was the strategic kind, the kind where he said he's sorry if the Christmas thing came out wrong. He was just joking around. He didn't mean I have no life, and can we please just turn the payments back on and talk about the rest later? If it came out wrong, please turn the payments back on. Even his apology had a payment plan attached. And I told him no. Not no forever, necessarily. I said I'm not flipping anything back on right now, because the second I do, this conversation ends, and we go right back to me being the family wallet, who's also somehow the family embarrassment, and I'm not living in that arrangement anymore. If we fix this, we fix the whole thing, not just your mortgage. That's when he got angry for real, the fear turning into meanness. And he said some stuff I'm still sitting with. He said I'm doing this because I'm jealous. That deep down I can't stand that he has a wife and kids and a full house, and I've got a nice quiet apartment and a bank account, so I'm using the one thing I have, money, to make everyone as miserable as I secretly am. He said I'm not generous, I'm controlling, that I kept all this secret for years, specifically so I could hold it over their heads one day, and this is the day. And the ugly thing is, sitting here now, I can't prove he's 100% wrong. I did keep it secret. I told myself it was to protect his pride, but was some part of me stockpiling it? Building a case? I really don't know. That accusation got under my skin because it wasn't pure nonsense, and the ones that aren't pure nonsense are the ones that keep you up. He left angry. Not resolved, not hugging it out. He left saying I'd regret this, that I was blowing up the family over a joke, and I'd be the one sitting alone realizing I pushed everyone away, proving their whole point about me. He got the last word on the way out the door, and it was basically the Christmas insult again, sharpened. Enjoy your empty apartment, at least now you chose it. Since then it hasn't gone quiet because, I told you, nobody in this family avoids anything, we litigate. Regina texted me a long message that started civil and got worse as it went, first framing it as a misunderstanding between adults, then landing on how she never asked me for anything. She did. How the car was Stephen's idea. It was both of theirs. How I've apparently always made her uncomfortable with how I insert myself into her kids' lives. There's that theme again. Even now, mid-crisis, needing my help, she couldn't stop herself from taking the shot. Rita's called twice more. Catherine, my aunt, texted to say she heard there's a money situation, and she hopes we work it out as a family, which is Catherine's whole personality, floating above everything hoping. Antonio, Regina's father, the man who joked at that table that at least I'll die rich with nobody to spend it on, has said nothing, and somehow his silence is louder than all of it. So here's where I actually am, and why I still need you all. The money was never the real thing. That's what these last few days taught me. The money was just the only language that finally made them look up. What I'm actually deciding now isn't whether to turn the payments back on. It's whether I want back into a family that, when you strip away my usefulness, apparently sees me as a harmless oddity to be watched and pitied. There's one more piece I haven't told you, and it's the reason I can't just walk away clean. And it's about the car and something Regina let slip in that long text that I didn't catch until my third read. It changes what this is. But this is already the longest thing I've ever written and my hands are tired, so I'm going to save it, because it deserves its own post, and honestly, I need to decide what I'm going to do about it before I say it out loud. The last voicemail I mentioned, the one from Stephen that changed everything, I still haven't gotten to what he actually said in it. I'll put it in the final update. It's the reason no wife, no kids, no life isn't even the worst thing said about me this month. Last update. All right, I'm telling you the two things I held back, then where it ended. Some of you won't like it. I don't really care anymore, and you'll see why. First, Regina's text, the thing I missed the first two reads. Buried in the middle, defending the car, she wrote that the car was really for the family, for driving the kids, so it was basically theirs. Basically theirs. Alone with my name on it, my signature, my problem if she wraps it around a pole. And in her head, it had quietly turned into their property because they were the ones using it. And that's when 4 years clicked into place. I wasn't funding gratitude. I was funding a bunch of people who believed they were owed. Everything I handed over stopped being a gift the second it touched their hands. It just became theirs, and I became the weird uncle standing near the money. Now the voicemail, the fifth one, the one I couldn't make myself repeat until now. Stephen left it late on day 3 before he came to my place, and he wasn't talking to me anymore. He didn't hang up, right? So after his message, there's about 40 seconds of him and Regina in the car not knowing it's recording. Regina's saying they just need to be nice to me till it's fixed. And Stephen, my brother, says, clear as day, don't stress. He'll turn it back on. He always caves. He needs us way more than we need him. He's got nobody. Where's he gonna go? Where's he gonna go? That's the whole thing. Not the Christmas joke. That was my brother, in private, explaining to his wife that my being alone was the leash, that I'd come crawling back because they were all I had. My loneliness wasn't something they felt bad about. It was the collateral they were counting on. So when he showed up playing worried brother, I already had that in my ear. That's why I didn't fold. He thought he was handling a sensitive little brother. He had no idea I'd heard the actual plan. I called everyone in, not one at a time. I made them all come to my parents' house, Stephen, Regina, Rita, because I was done getting talked about in cars and cornered in kitchens, and it got loud. This was the fight of my life, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I was calm, because I wasn't. I was shaking. I played the voicemail out loud. In my mother's living room. Stephen lunged for my phone and I held it up over his head and let his own voice fill the room. He needs us more than we need him. Regina went straight to it's out of context, and I turned on her and said, out of context? Go ahead. Tell me what context turns, where's he gonna go, into something that isn't disgusting? She had nothing. So she reached for the kids, because of course she did, and I said, don't you dare hide behind those kids after you told my own brother you keep an eye on me around them. Yeah. He told me that part too, Regina. So you don't get to grab the kids like a human shield now. Not today. Not from me. Stephen tried the same garbage from my apartment. Jealous, controlling, held it over their heads for years. And I let him run out of gas, and then I said what I drove over there to say. You're right, I kept it quiet. But you just told me in your own voice exactly why I'm never lifting a finger for you again. I didn't have nobody, Stephen. I had you. You were the somebody. And you looked at your own brother and saw a sad sack you could squeeze dry as long as he stayed lonely enough to take it. And that's when he really went off, fear turning mean, screaming that I'm pathetic, that I'm blowing up the family over hurt feelings, that this proves what everyone always said about me. And I didn't back up an inch. I said, pathetic? Pathetic paid your mortgage for 4 years while you told Antonio what a great provider you are. You bragged about my water heater. You wore my life like it was yours and called me a waste of space over ham the same night. So go ahead and tell the room who's pathetic. The guy who paid, or the grown man who spent 4 years lying that he could? He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, breathing hard, and for the first time in my life, my brother had absolutely nothing, because there's no comeback to the truth when it's sitting on the table with his voice attached to it. My mom was crying. And here's where I lose some of you, because Rita, through the tears, still landed on, but he's your brother. Family forgives. And I looked at the woman who nodded at that table, who left me a voicemail about Stephen's feelings while I was the one bleeding out, and I told her the truth to her face. You raised one son to be the provider and one son to be the spare. And you've known which of us was which my entire life. You nodded at Christmas because deep down you agree with them. You just need me around and paying for the privilege of being insulted. She didn't deny it. She looked at her hands. And that silence told me everything the last 30 years had been dancing around. So here's where I landed, and I'm at peace with the anger, if that makes sense. Money stays off. Mortgage, gone. Phones. I gave the kids lines and Stephen's number 30 days to move to their own plan, which is 30 more than they ever gave me. The car I'm doing by the book, through the bank, transferring the loan to Regina or selling it, because I will not be legally on the hook for a woman who decided my property was basically hers. We're not talking. Not because I blocked anybody. I didn't. My phone's wide open. They know my address. Stephen's texted twice, still no apology, just rage and then guilt tripping, which is honestly the most real he's ever been with me. Regina went dark, Rita calls, and I answer some and let some ring, and those are the only ones that still cut because she's my mother, and the leash they described in that car was real. They were the somebody. And now I'm finding out what actually having nobody feels like instead of just being threatened with it. It's quieter than they promised. And it's mine. They were right about two things at Christmas. No wife, no kids, but no life. That part was never true. That was just the life they assigned me, so I'd keep paying for theirs. I finally read the fine print, and I gave it back.